Good morning, all. My name is Lisa Stein, and I'm a part of the Warrior Scholar Team, and I am so excited to have everybody here today on this beautiful Yale Day and for our first ever all-women's cohort and our in-person WVED conversation with some fabulous people. I'm going to ask each person to individually introduce themselves. Again, my name is Lisa. My role on our team is the Director of Outreach and Admissions. I am a U.S. Army vet from about 107 years ago. So, you know, it's the truth. It's the truth. But I'm also a non-traditional student. I got my first few degrees in my 40s, and I spent the last 16 years in higher education before I joined this incredible team at Warrior Scholar. So I'm really excited to be here. And so I'm going to ask my colleague and team member, Cassie, to talk about herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cassie. I am the Admissions and Student Candidate Recruitment Manager here at Warrior Scholar Project. I did 4 years in the Marine Corps and just graduated with my Master's in Social Work last year from the University of Michigan.
Very cool. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kimiko Ebata, and I'm a career coach and military transition expert. I have the privilege of wearing 2 professional hats. So by day, I get to work with fantastic veterans like my colleague here, Desaree, with the Classy Veterans Program. And so we are a foundation that seeks to identify and train transitioning veterans so that they can thrive and succeed on competitive college campuses across the country. And so I get the privilege of supporting them with their transition in terms of their professional development and career exploration, making sure that they have the tools and opportunities that they need to succeed and find success after service. So that's by day. And then by night, I get to play entrepreneur and career coach. So I have my own company, Key Coaching, and I'm able to support mission-driven students, veterans, mid-career professionals with finding success in the workforce. So finding alignment between their personal goals and their professional goals to make sure that they feel that they are able to catalyze a career that counts and create a life that's worthwhile. So great to be with you today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. As always, Kimiko is so hard to follow. My name is Desaree. I am a U.S. Navy submarine veteran. I served for 8 years. I am currently a student at Wesleyan University, which isn't too far from here. It's about 30 minutes from this location. I'm studying neuroscience and behavior, psychology, and human rights advocacy. And I'm interested in law and very excited to be here. Thank you all.
All right, fantastic. Thank you again. I'm really excited to be at this table of women. So I wanted to say we have a few questions. I'm going to get the party started with a few questions, but I want to make sure that anybody that's in this room, you guys are the ones we want to make sure you get your questions answered. Anywhere online, please do not hesitate to put those questions in there. We'll keep our eye on them and we'll get them answered. So I'm just going to start off. So just pre-college, some people are looking to get into college. Some people have been there. So how did you explore higher education options? For me, that was easy. I would have started at a small liberal arts college where I'm from and was like, you know, again, I transitioned out of the military a long time ago and became a mother. And then it was time for me to go back to college and I was at a perfect place for it. So that was an easy opportunity for me to take. How about you, Cassie?
I didn't really do a whole lot of searching. I always knew that I wanted to go to the University of Michigan, and that's the only school I applied to. And thankfully, they allowed me to be on their campus and in their institution. So
They're the benefits.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So my mother didn't attend a 4-year institution, and my dad attended school in Canada. So I really felt in the dark and alone and overwhelmed when it came to the college admissions process. And so, you know, I also was one of 2 minority students in my high school class of 230. And so very much, and as the eldest of 2 siblings and the only female, I was blazing that trail alone, and I didn't even know how to take the first step. And so really I give all my credit where it's due. I had this fantastic guidance counselor, Dr. Smith, in my corner, who really helped me to synthesize my own story and reflect on my values and my interests so that I could shape a professional narrative for the schools that would be the best fit for me. And so I got the golden ticket by being placed with Dr. Smith, and I have him to thank to this day.
For me, as an enlisted veteran, and I was part of the initial integration for women into submarines. I never felt like I could make the impact that I wanted, and there were a lot of things that happened that I felt that if I had been in a position to project myself more, I could have made a difference there. And so I saw higher education as a way for me to pursue avenues where I could tackle advocacy from a different perspective. And so for me, that was really behind my decision making, so that I can get this education and then go back to doing what I love.
That's fantastic. Everybody has such an individual story, and I love the opportunity to visit about those people that were in our corner, those people that believed in us, or that wanting to give back, or again, I just knew where I wanted to be. But still, we have those struggles as we go into it. And oftentimes, like, so when you talk about with advocacy or having somebody in your corner, oftentimes we have to have somebody believe in us before we are able to manifest that and believe in ourselves. And for some, it takes a long time to get that. Heck, I'm 57 and I'm still struggling with it on a daily basis. But again, it is just such an amazing time to find yourself. And as you are looking at your journey, and anybody out there on your journey, just know that believe in yourself. Somebody else believes in yourself, and you need to as well. So here's a question. So we all have different degree programs. How did you choose what major you wanted to be in? For me, mine is interdisciplinary. Again, I started school as a significant adult and had lots of life experiences. So it allowed me to pull in communications and psychology and all those kind of things that felt good to me, that I knew that I would be able to be successful in. And then when I went on to get my master's, I got it in organizational management because, again, I knew I didn't want to get to MBA because, graduate level finance was never going to be my thing, but how to talk to people, how do organizations work, how do we lead in organizations, that felt good to me. So that is how it chose me based on my life experiences. How about yourself?
I think I ultimately decided on social work through a combination of experiences like you're talking about. I was first interested in pursuing something and just like giving back and helping people. When I was on my first deployment and on a female engagement team where we were, like being with the women and they were coming through and the language barrier was, I only knew a few words, but they saw us as a peaceful presence in their lives in this area that was not peaceful. And the gratefulness that you could feel from their presence, and they would hug us as they were coming through, and like I would hold their babies, and it was just a really amazing experience. And it was like, okay, why are we in this place in Iraq? And then I got put on this female engagement team, and I was like, okay, so there is if you can find some shred of light in this situation, this is it. And I just kept feeling that I'm here to give back and help others. And then that was really solidified for me when I was helping with Warrior Scholar Project. I started doing this long before I started my master's program. And it was through this experience and helping everyone else that I was like, there's no other thing for me to do other than this.
Very cool.
I'm just so inspired and empowered being here, sitting in this group of women, right? Especially during this difficult time for our country, right? But this idea of putting service before self, just as you mentioned, Cassie. So as a biracial person and someone who grew up with dual citizenship in the US and Canada, diversity was always just ingrained in everything that I did, in my identity. So I got to college and, I saw myself more as a bridge, right? Representing two races, two countries. And I really was deeply interested in international relations. Also, selfishly, it would allow me to study abroad for a year and graduate in 4 years. So let's be real about that. And so international relations and with the third world specialization just really spoke to me because growing up in a family, right, that believed in service and understanding sort of all of the things that you were grateful for and were given through life and how to pay it forward. Really understanding other cultures and other perspectives was something that was really important to me. And so now I get to bridge sort of the civilian veteran, right, divide, to help bridge the civilian veteran divide. And I'm grateful to be able to do that each and every day.
That was amazing. I love you so much. So mine's not quite as artistic, my decision. One of the things that I've learned attending a liberal arts school is that a lot of the translation for what degree you get versus what job you want to do is kind of muddled. And that, you know, I have a friend that is a feminist or sexuality studies major, and he's currently working in the environment field. Like he's working to environmental, I can't remember exactly what it was. And so I saw that there was a lot of crossover for that. So for me, it's really just been the process of elimination. I am grateful to go to a school that has an open curriculum. So there's not that like you have to take these classes at these times. I can take a wide variety of classes, and I've just been kind of, you know, picking out the classes that I've taken are like, this is not my field. I don't want to do this. I had a mechanical design class last semester, and I was like, this is not me. And so I just kind of pursued the things that I found interesting. And that's kind of why I have like, you know, neuroscience and then human rights advocacy. It's kind of broad, but you can really pursue the things that interest you without having to worry necessarily that you're not going to be able to get a job that has like a specific title following your undergraduate career.
These are all fabulous things. And again, as Kimiko brought up recently, again, just, you know, transition, and we're all in a place of transition throughout our lives. But one of the things that we at Warrior Scholar are here is to help transitioning service members into the civilian world, or people that are still active duty, and what does that transition look like? And again, both of you brought up being women and that transition. We bring our identities no matter where we go. And so one of the things I wondered is, again, as your identity, and for those of us on the panel that are veterans, and then I'd like to get your, Kimiko, as well, as a woman, but also as a woman that works with people in transition, how can you describe what your college experience was like based on those certain identities that would speak to everybody that is in this room, that is online, about those transitions that we're making? And as I said, you know, I transitioned, when I transitioned out of the military, maybe not 107, like 105 and a half, but you know, figuring out figuring out the world. How do you find a job? Well, I signed up. This was your MOS. This is your school you're going to go to. This is your job. Yeah. Okay, what does that look like on the outside? How do I make those transitions? And I would argue anybody that's made it through basic training can do whatever job they want to. We often don't think we can, but we can. But then going to school as in my 40s, then I'm not the 18-year-old in the classroom and those kind of stuff. And so you bring a different opportunity for yourself to learn, as well as those around you to learn. So again, bringing that identity of that as well. So I think that those were two important things as I moved through the world. And then again, you know, I'm not telling anybody in this room that does it, you know, moving through the world as a woman, what does that look like? And in those places and those spaces that we need to be, you know, bringing that into consideration as we move through our life. What about you, Cassie? How was your college experience?
My college experience was isolated, I would say. I you know, like you're saying, like, I went through boot camp, I deployed twice to Iraq, like, did all of these things. And so when I was getting ready to transition and going into higher education, I was like, well, I've done all of these really hard things. I don't need any help anymore, right? Like, I wanted to do it. I mean, I didn't really want to do it on my own, but I felt like I had to like prove something. And don't do that. Don't do that. Please ask for help, because it was hard. It was I struggled a lot, just simple stuff, right? Like, where are the buildings where my classrooms are? Or like, I really didn't have any direction on what I wanted my undergraduate degree to be in. So I was taking all of these classes, but unlike your school, like Michigan is like, you have this finite time that you're here. So really make the, you know, like figure out what plan you want and like follow that plan. And I was like, I don't know what I want. So I was like picking classes here and there. And I think I had like 2 semesters left and I still hadn't declared anything. And I finally decided on English because I love to read and write. And so then I had like 16 credits each semester of like just English classes, which is like a lot of reading, a lot of writing.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. But I did that to myself. I was just being stubborn and I got through it, but it was very isolating and I didn't know where to look for resources, like I'm sure maybe you had the same experience. Like it was hard to find resources. They weren't as advertised as they are now. And even still, it's like you have to know where to go to like look for things. It's not so evident as to what things are out there for veterans. So it was isolated and I struggled a lot, but I didn't do that my second time around when I did my master's degree.
Isolated, that's a pretty powerful question. Yeah, pretty powerful use of that word, and that really talks about how you felt. How about, you, Kimiko, again, has walked through this world as a woman of color, and now you're working with veterans in transition. What does that look like for you and for those that you're working for?
Yeah. Oh, powerful question. So I'd say as a woman navigating the world, as a child and the eldest of 3, I was considered bossy. I remember specifically, right? And Dad, if you're on here, right? Like, yes, I was the bossy one, the manipulative one, and I remember cringing every time I was reprimanded for being bossy, right? My brothers were never called bossy, right? Interesting. And then I remember going to college and juggling 2 jobs, right, and coursework, and I was trying to study abroad for the year. And people would ask me like, Key, how do you do it, right? Like, and I was like, oh, interesting. Do my brothers ever get asked as men how they're able to juggle all these things? Not to my knowledge. I don't know, Rob's had pipe in, but right. And it's so interesting. And so I think, especially nowadays, right? I like to think that bossy women, we become executive leaders. Yes. Right. And so like, it's not our job just to sort of speak when spoken to and just to listen and to help others. It's your job to advocate for yourself and to know who you are, because no one else is going to do it for you. And that is the case in the military, especially I hear from my female veterans that I work with, right? You feel invisible. You always feel like you're the spouse, right, of a veteran. You're not a veteran yourself. And so visibility in the civilian workforce and your careers on campus are incredibly important. And so just know your story, know who you are, know what you love to do, know what you believe in, and don't sacrifice any of those things.
So to echo some of that and to add to it, there exists a niche where every single person here has something that they can add in a powerful way. Like there is something that you do better than anybody else that would be in a position to do that. And you really have to harness that. And for me, my college experience started off like you were talking about with isolating. I'm part of the posse program, so I kind of have like a built-in support group. But when things start getting hard, it's hard to keep that cohesion. And so one of the things that I had to do was reach out, and it's so hard to do that in that you get busy with school, you get busy with extracurriculars, you get so overwhelmed by what's going on, and that's when you most want to isolate, but it's also when you most need to reach out. And other people are going through the exact same thing that you are, and you can find connection in places that you didn't originally expect. It has been a really humbling experience going to school as a non-traditional student. I think I came in here or came there with like, I've done all these things, I've found myself, I found what my identity is as a person. And I'm like, I'm going to add so much, but I've been changed significantly just by the people that are traditional students. And that's not something that I necessarily expected. And they have stories as well, and they have things to add to the world. And so I think it's really important to come in humble and realize that, your experiences in the military are huge, and they're going to, give you a lot of ways in which you can serve your community. You're going to have experience that other people don't have, but it doesn't translate as well to the civilian world, and people won't be able to understand what that was like, but you can find connection with people who have similar goals as you. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten was run as hard and as fast as you can towards your goal, and then look around you, and the people that are running next to you are the people that you're meant to be with. And I think that that's just a testament that you can find connection in places that you didn't expect when you are pursuing what's important to you.
Wow. All right, I'm just gonna stop there for a minute. A little moment of silence, because that was fabulous. Because that fits, and it also fits right into our next question. I hear things, again, isolation, but you didn't do that the second time around. And Kimiko, just believing yourself and moving forward. And we as women, the labels that are put on us. Again, I'm the oldest of 5. And so Lynn and Jenny, Chris, Kevin, if you're watching, bossy and stuff like that, and being able to step into that. And then again, as you talk advocacy, what are some of the tips or strategies that, especially I'm interested in what you have to say, since you're like, oh, I didn't do that the second time around. Like you learn from it. So what were some of the things as you were going through college, again, as a woman, as a veteran, how did you find that group, or how did you, because I think that's one of the best things about Warrior Scholar. And I think, again, I'm hoping that, again, people like Desaree or Amber, that say, I have a group now. I have a group that I can say, yeah, I don't understand this or whatever. And that, I think, is one of the most powerful things that we're trying to build at Warrior Scholar, is a group that says, I see you because I am you. So how about for yourself?
So when I was going back to school to pursue my master's degree, it wasn't so much about academic resources that I was looking for. I had book rehab at this time, and so everything was fine with that. The program plans in that degree were very prescriptive. Like there's no going outside of the classes that they sort of choose for you and scaffold to get once you get to the end. So I wasn't really looking for academic resources, but what did save me was just reaching out to other people and finding a community that I could just spend time with and hang out with, because that is so important. I didn't do that the first time around, and I fizzled fast. You have to have those times and anywhere, and especially when you're transitioning. No one should ever transition alone. To have just a community that you can just hang out with, or drink with, or just have time with those folks that really understand you and kind of speak your same language. That is what saved me. I felt like I finally had a place.
And it's emotional. Having a place. See, you can't see, but there are goosebumps. Again, having a place. And that is really one of the things that we're looking to build here at Warrior Scholar. And as women, is a place. Where do I belong? Like you said, who understands my language? Who can I just sit with in silence and know that I'm in a place of strength because that person sees me? Thank you for sharing, because that's not easy. How about you, Ms. Kimiko?
Yeah, so college is a laboratory in many senses. I think it's a laboratory for academic exploration, but your own personal experimentation, right? Professional exploration as well. But it's also figuring out who you work best with, who you need, right, in your ecosystem to be able to overcome some of these challenges, how you learn best, right? Where you learn best. And so for me, it was about going to the library for 8 hours at a time, every Saturday, and making sure that I had those set routines, because that's what I needed to succeed in the classroom and at college. And so I think, really it's about understanding yourself, but also taking into consideration college is just as much the academic value as the personal and professional exploration as well. And so, you know, I think course blinders, right? Like I was in that library doing my thing. They used to call me Franklin because my backpack was so big, massive textbooks. I'm dating myself. But, you know, it's also just as much as going on that hiking trip with the Trek Club on Saturday, or going to that professional panel and talking to that panelist, right? To pick their brain and figure out the lessons they learned. So it's really about striking that balance, understanding yourself, how, where, and with who you work best and learn best and want to be associated with, right? Like as a person and a professional, but also like making sure you have that personal balance and that professional balance as well.
That's really important. That's something you realize that you also need to have a life outside of school. So for me, let's see, tips and tricks. Echoing the connection thing, you know, specifically with Warrior Scholar Project, I didn't realize that, you know, there was this family that you become a part of afterwards. And that's really been huge. Not something that I realized I was going to have when I separated from the military, but it has definitely made that transition easier for me. And there exists, you know, many different avenues to pursue that kind of connection that you can get, and this is a great one. Some other tips I would have to say is, you know, there's so many resources at your school, it's going to be overwhelming. Don't know where you're at school, but generally speaking, that's some of the things that I've noticed. There's typically one person, whether it's like someone in the accessibility office, someone that can direct you based on what your need is. And as veterans, there's going to be, you know, some of us have disabilities, some of us have barriers to success, and don't feel like you can't bring those up. Don't feel like you can't be accommodated for those barriers. Or that there's like some feeling of guilt, like you're not doing it by yourself or anything like that. They exist to help you, and you should take advantage of those if you can. Yeah, and then as far as the personal life thing goes, I have to trick myself into studying for things, so I tend to over-treat myself. So, you know, I'm the one that's like, all right, I'm gonna eat these gummy bears after I finish this paragraph. Yeah, that's me. So find different ways to learn material. There are a ton of online resources. There's videos. There's, you know, that you can download an app where you can highlight things. There's so many things that you don't just have to sit there and read a textbook and listen to your music and hate your life. Not that you hate your life, but I would hate my life. There's a lot of ways that you can be creative in the way that you learn, and you should look for those because not everyone can just sit there and power through reading a book.
So what I heard there is gummies after eating the paragraph, right? I'm good. I'm good. So just, you know, I just continue to hear so many things, fabulous things about feeling I have to do it by myself, or shame if I don't. And again, shame is one of those things that all too often I believe that we as women spin in. I should have done it this way. I should have done that. Oh, I shouldn't have to ask for help. I shouldn't need this, but I have this disability, but I don't want anybody to know. And we live inside that shame spiral in our head. And so I just loved hearing you both say, you have to look outside yourself and it's okay. There are other people. And that's one of those things that, again, from my past life in higher education, people that had a disability or a need a disability, differently abled or whatever, you know, we get into college or we as adults like, I can't ask anybody for that help. And why the hell not? You know, but again, we do that to ourselves. We do that to ourselves all too often, is saying that I need help. Sometimes often does not feel authentic to us. But we're the ones that end up paying for that. So know that there are people out there. And I know that in higher education, you know, in K through 12, it is the school's job to make sure you have what you need to be successful. Once you get into higher education, it becomes your job. You know, they're oftentimes at schools, they're not able to ask you, well, do you have ADHD, or do you have this, or do you have that? You have to be the one that says that, because I mean, those things, those rights and responsibilities. You know, FERPA is one thing in K through 12, and it's a different through in higher education. So really knowing what you need to be successful, whether it's the trek or whether it's the gummy bears or whether it's the I need more time or those kind of stuff, you know, those are all self-discovery, and that allows you to be who you are and be successful. So again, my last question, and then I'm putting it out to you, so just start thinking about those questions online and here, is if you had to do it all over again, what would be one piece of advice you would look back on and go, okay, Lisa, maybe it would be, Lisa, don't wait as long to go to school, because as I think of myself now, I think, oh, I would have wanted to do more. And it's not like I can't do more at 57, but it does not dollar cost average out when it comes to school loans. So, but again, maybe believe in yourself a little bit sooner and know that you can do more things is something I would tell Lisa 1.0. How about you, Ms. Cassie?
Back to me.
Okay, go again. I mean, then the people after you are, they're like, no, I need more time.
I know.
I'm deliberating between two. I'm gonna combine them. So Wayne Gretzky once said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't shoot, right? And that is spoken of me, right? Like, but you know, I think it's so true, especially for women. It is so important for us. The studies show that we actually land jobs 16% more times than men, and 18% more times than men for our stretch jobs. But we apply 20% less, right? And we always think that we need to have 100% of the qualifications for a job. And I think for men, it's like closer to 70%, right? Qualifications are met and then they apply for that job, right? So take every shot, right? Have a bias to action. Anytime that you're thinking about, oh, like maybe I should ask for that raise, set up that conversation, get it on the calendar already, right? Like, or you're thinking, oh, maybe I should reach out to that person for coffee. Like, maybe that's something I'd be interested in. I could learn something from that professional. Send them the invitation already. Thinking about applying for that job, apply for the job already, right? And so have that biased action. It's so easy for us to spin in that spiral of shame and overthinking, but just do it and see what happens. And you might be surprised with the outcome.
Yeah, along those similar lines, when I was working on transitioning out of the military, I would like Google places or send out emails, kind of like put out feelers for opportunities, and then they would immediately want to Zoom with me. And for some reason, I was just like, why do these people want to talk to me? Like, you could just answer this in an email. And I realized that it was the start of the network and that people were wanting to connect with me. So similar to what you were saying, like, don't be afraid to connect with people, and also don't be afraid to let people connect with you. It can add a lot to your network. And then the second thing that I wanted to say is, I struggled significantly and still do with feelings of imposter syndrome. I think that's what we're calling it. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm even now, like, I'm sitting with all these amazing women. I value all of your opinions. I think you're all amazing. And yet I'm still like, they're going to realize that I don't know anything that I'm talking about. And, you know, in my daily life, I feel like I have a lot of confidence, but when it comes to these areas, I'm just like, I don't have my stuff together here. I got to figure it out. And so I think that building confidence isn't just something that's done. I think that it's a continuous thing that you have to work on. You have to feed, like, you know, your health or your mental health. And so don't let those feelings of like not being the right person or not feeling like you're a fake keep you from opportunities. And when you see that rearing its head, identify it. Because the moment you identify something, you can take away like that power that it has over you. So yeah, that's it.
I think I would tell my younger self to just explore more options. Like I said, when I was getting near the end of my enlistment, I knew I wanted to go to school. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go to University of Michigan. I mean, it's a great school, but it's just like, it was convenient for me. My family lives in Michigan. I grew up there. I heard about, University of Michigan my whole entire life. And so that was just what I knew. And like, I'd heard about it, but I'm a first generation student. So I didn't know that there were other options for me. I was just like, oh, well, this is like the next step and we'll just see if it works out. And luckily it did, but I wish I would have done some more exploring and not limited myself to this one space because it just felt comfortable. Yeah. Like pushing yourself outside of those comfort zones is so important, and that's where growth happens. And that's what I would tell 19-year-old me, like, don't just stay there.
Don't just stay. It was funny when Desiree, when you said that imposter syndrome, you're thinking in your head, I'm with all these amazing women, and then all of us amazing women are thinking the same thing. Like, oh my God, Desiree, you are so put together. But we're having those conversations in our head that we're all feeling the same way. And I brought up first generation students, and I'm so glad you did that, Cassie, because 65%, at least 65% of the people coming out of the military that are able to go into college would be first generation students. So there's an entire different ball of wax as well, which is again another thing that Warrior Scholar is looking to do is make a more informed consumer of higher education. And that doesn't just mean financial aid, or which it does 100%, financial aid or predatory colleges or those kinds of stuff. It means being able to look outside. And then when you have an organization like Warrior Scholar where you can go, okay, I feel like when I first met Amber, you were deciding on 2 different schools, and so like, hey, what does that look like? And then you can put it out there and you can talk to people and stuff like that. But oftentimes, again, as a first generation student, you feel like, I don't know what to ask. I don't want to look stupid, so I'm not going to ask.
Right.
And then and you did it and you powered through, but as you look back at now, you're like, okay, maybe if I'd have asked, it would have looked differently. And that's okay, because you are an extremely successful woman that is giving back, which is at where you started at the very beginning, is how do I give back? And you have moved through that space and you're doing that. But I'm so glad you brought up few of those things. That is really cool. All right, so now it's to y'all. So go ahead, talk to me. First, tell me who you are.
So I'm Vanessa Valverde. I'm actually still active duty in the Marine Corps. And I wanted to pick your guys' brains a little bit on leadership styles that have worked for you. So I know that we're all in a male-dominated workplace. So we've had to learn to tailor our leadership styles. Sometimes you're too bossy, so you get some unsavory labels, or you're too nice, and then you don't get your point across, and you have to reiterate yourself. So how have you seen those leadership styles that you learned work best for you, and what are they? And then how did you transfer them to the academia side and your professional side?
I'm so glad you asked that. And for a lot of reasons is, again, we've established I'm older than everybody in the room. I'm 57 and I'm currently working with a leadership coach as I grow into who I am. And so that learning always moves through. And I think for me, one of the things I've noticed of myself, and oftentimes as women, we tend to people please. Yeah. So we're not as direct in our conversation, because what happens if that person doesn't want to do what I told them to do? Mm-hmm. Or what happens if, they get mad at me and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the things that I've had to step into is I'm not even gonna be able to say it now because my therapist is gonna be like, Lisa, you can do this. But just stepping into that role of we have a mission to get taken care of, and I need to be clear. And clear, what does Brene Brown say? Clear is kind. And I think for me, that's one of those things I've had to work on is I'm not as clear as I should for fear of what's that other person gonna think. And when that gets in that directly impacts, again, Cassie's one of my colleagues. And if I say to Cassie, well, I'm hoping maybe you would like to do, which is what's going on in my head, that doesn't do her any good, because she's like, what the hell are you talking about? And stuff like that. And she wants to get it done. And I'm just like, ugh. So if I say, Cassie, this is what I need you to do. And, just step into that, that's leadership, to say, this is a mission and this is how we're going to get there. And I think oftentimes we pull ourselves back is what I have found for myself.
I can jump in.
Do it.
So I was kind of the complete opposite in the military. I started out really, like you were talking about, kind of passive aggressive, didn't have like that feelings of gumption. And then being in a completely male dominated field, I went really over the top with it. So I was overtly aggressive, and it worked in some areas. In some areas, I probably could have scaled it back a lot, you know? And so one of the things that I've had to work on is realizing that the anger that I felt when I was trying to lead out of stress is really what it was, doesn't work for most people. And that there's a better way to do it and a better way to say what you want to say. And you can say it, you know, directly, you can say it, you know, with your chest, if you will, you know, but you don't have to overcompensate, I think is really the thought process behind it, right? Like your leadership style, once you figure it out, is going to be effective if you figure it out. But it doesn't have to overcompensate for something that you don't need to overcompensate for, right? Like you don't have to, you know, you don't have to feel bad for speaking softly in a space, right? You as a person deserve respect and deserve to be heard, and specifically if you're in a position of leadership. And so you can learn to navigate those waters like you were talking about with saying things more clearly and being, you know, less passive aggressive. I think that's what I'm looking for there, but you don't have to overcompensate for it. And I think that that's something that I learned because it was out of hand sometimes.
Great advice.
But you bring up a really great point, right? How many men have been told that they're being too aggressive in their careers?
Right.
How many women have been told that we're too aggressive in the workplace, right? Like, come
Yes.
on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think for me initially, especially as a civilian walking into this veteran career space, I had tons of imposter syndrome. You all don't know, right? Especially the vets that I've worked with, because it was something that I had to work on. It was a muscle that I had to build, right? That self-confidence. But it started with self-awareness. So I'm not a veteran. Okay, so how can I empathize with that population? What can I do to like get up to speed with the lingo, the acronyms, so we can build these trusting relationships? I remember my first workshop, my first career readiness workshop with a group of transitioning vets, many of them Green Berets, right? Like I checked my outfit, no joke, the night before I laid out 3 different outfits and I probably tried them on a dozen times, right? Like it's about self-awareness, knowing your environment, knowing who you're working with, knowing yourself, right? But it sounds like we're also Brene Brown fangirls here. In terms of my leadership, right, it's about I didn't want to sacrifice who I was. And as a person, I'm a compassionate person with a big heart who wears her heart on her sleeve, always ended up in tears, right? Like there's puddles at my feet always. And so it was about having a soft front, but a firm backbone. So really knowing like, okay, like I will give to this extent, but like this is where I draw the line, right? And so I really like her imagery of having a soft front and a firm backbone.
I think for me, I think we all kind of share this sentiment. Like we just want to, especially as women, like people please, right? Like it's so easy to fall into that like role of just wanting. Please don't be mad at me. You know, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't tell you how many times I apologize for things, and Lisa's like, stop apologizing for these things. This is okay. This is like, just say what you need to say, and that's it. And so I think for me, like, really leaning into leadership, a lot of it is just like setting boundaries of like, this is like what you're saying, like, this is how much I can do. And then I will not go above that, and then sticking to that. There's been so many times where I've been like, okay, these are my work hours. I'm not doing anything past 5. And then I'll look at the clock and it's like 7. And I'm like, crap, I did it again. Like having those boundaries. And I don't know if that really like falls into like a leadership, you know, like what you're talking about. But I feel like it's setting an example, like especially we work from home and like my daughter sees me working. And so if she's seeing me in this role and setting clear cut boundaries and sticking to them, hopefully then she'll sort of emulate that as she moves through the world.
All right, so next time I get a Slack from you at 7 o'clock, I'm like, I'm just gonna send you this video. That was amazing question. Thank you so much for asking. Anybody else have a question?
I'll ask. Oh, yeah. Oh, my name is Laura Medina. I was in Dartmouth for 5 years. And thank you so much for sharing so far your experience. I would like to know how you go about time management. Obviously.
You just heard what she said.
Yeah, I kind of let it too, so I was like, all right, that's perfect. Especially coming after the military and you're more or less kind of told what to do, or you just are set into like the schedule. And then you get out and you're like, well, I have all this time, like, what do I do with it?
Sure.
So how do you juggle, or how did you guys go about school and family and friends, or how did that look like afterwards?
Again, I'm still learning it. Again, you guys, we look through those things, but I really think I'm going to use the word compartmentalize in not an unhealthy way. Oftentimes we think if I compartmentalize my feelings, I put them over there and I ignore them. But again, setting those boundaries of, okay, I have this assignment I need to get done. I'm going to work on it at this time, and this is what I'm going to work on. And, you know, oftentimes for me, I can find myself, oh, the email came in or a text came in or something. So I'm, squirrel. And they say it takes about 15 minutes to get back on track. When you swirl like that, your brain has to get back into that place. And so, you know, using a calendar, a lot of people use, again, that calendar you know, that finding those, this is when this starts and this is when this ends, and or what Cal Newport calls it deep work, you know, is like making time for the things you need to do. And that includes, like you said, taking the trek. And, you know, sometimes we can put that, okay, I'm going to do this assignment. Well, then I have to do this for work. And then I have to do this for work. And oh my gosh, I forgot to eat.
Yeah.
And, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's midnight, I'm doing my laundry. And I think really for me, it's about this is when I'm working on this. And this is when I'm doing this. And, but that it's just creating those boundaries, because it's easy just to run over those. Okay, add just like 5 more emails and I'll be done. And then you're already 20 minutes into your next block. So I think that, you know, for me saying, set timer for 1 hour.
Yeah.
You know, and then, because then that goes, oh, it's an hour.
Mhm.
And it stops me to think about it.
I think this is especially tricky when you're, you know, going into higher education, right? Like you get to pick your classes, maybe you do like 12 credits a semester. So that's typically like 4 classes. And the way, you know, you can set your schedule up to have like classes on Tuesday and Thursday. So now you have like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday free. And I'm not the best like time management person, but if I would have, I wish I would have gone back to my younger self and said like, hey, schedule things that aren't just school. Like when I tell you guys, I struggled in undergrad, I struggled. Like I graduated like with a 3.9, but I fought for that thing. And when I wasn't in class, my nose was in the book. I was studying from the morning I woke up, or reading or writing until I went to bed. And then whatever chance I had in between classes, I was doing that because it was important to me. But what I wish I would have done was schedule other things in the day as well. And like just taken maybe Saturday or maybe like the Wednesday and not do anything school related. Because I did that, but I was so burnt out at the end. And I feel like I would have been more, just like felt more accomplished maybe. Like maybe if I would have hung out with my friends more, maybe I would have got a 3.5. And that's okay because my experience would have been richer, you know? So like, again, I'm terrible with time management. So I wish I could answer your question better. But I wish I would have really set some boundaries, again, like not good with boundaries, but just like in taking time for yourself. And that could mean taking time for yourself or hanging out with your family or walking your dog, but just like turning everything off, not checking your school email or anything like that, not opening a book or doing anything school related, and just focusing on recharging, because that will make you more successful as you move through the rest of your week. And I don't have any really great tips on time management because I'm really bad at time management. Like I said, I'm still struggling with this like 9 to 5. Okay, and I'll even start working at 7 and like go till 7. It's not a good, I'm still working through it. But especially like, but I do like on Saturday, I'm like, okay, this is the day, like not checking work email or Slack or anything like that. That's my day for me and my family. And those times are just as important as like writing paper or reading the book or something like that. So.
Yes, such great pearls of wisdom learning from both of you, but certainly echoing, you know, what has been shared in terms of time blocking. So being really wedded to your calendar and turning notifications off when you're working on a project that you need to have, you know, your full attention dedicated towards. Also, I love, you know, that you are working towards being religious about keeping time on your calendar for you, which is something that I struggle with. And I love, my therapist too has given me this great image as a type A person and as a female, we are professional plate spinners, right? So we have so many plates in the air that we just need to keep in the air, right? Like it's like we're in the circus or something. And I loved her for helping me shift that from them being china plates to like plastic bamboo plates, right? So if one falls, like the world isn't gonna shatter, right? And so really like keeping it all in perspective, but in terms of time management, what I'll add to what the two panelists have also have already shared is that it is about, you know, also making sure you're moving the needle on the things that mean the most to you. So every time I sit down each day, I think, okay, what's one small thing, if it's asking that person to coffee, if it's applying for something, I can do today that will set me up for success to achieve my weekly goal, to achieve my monthly goal, to achieve my annual goal, my 5-year goal. What's that one small thing? And I actually put like 30 minutes on my calendar for that one small thing because we've become victims to our inboxes, right? Like it's just the emails will always be coming, right? The notifications will always be coming, but like we're not gonna move the needle on our lives if we don't focus on the things that are meaningful to us. So also being religious about, you know, as much as it is about your daily walks and your own self-care, like what is the thing that you really care about that could change the game for you later on?
It's really great advice. So one of the common feelings that I've noticed from people going to college is that the work doesn't end and there is this low grade constant stress about it constantly being there. You may not have any assignments due, but knowing that they're coming up, it's gonna add this low grade stress to your life. So setting that one day where you're like, tonight, no school, we're not doing this. I'm gonna drink White Claws and watch Criminal Minds. If that's what I'm gonna do, is huge because it can kind of give you like a small break from that constant stress. For me, I have to set boundaries on my procrastination. I'm a procrastinator. I'm not like a 2 a.m. the day of procrastinator, not that bad, but I will procrastinate. And so what I do is I'm like, all right, reasonably, how much time do I actually need to write this paper? I don't need 2 months to write this paper, unless it's like a thesis, but I'm not there yet. You know, I'm gonna need like 1 week max, right? And so I don't worry about it until then, and then I worry about it. And I think that that's been really helpful because instead of me constantly like, I have 5 papers due this semester, I have 3 exams to study for, I'm like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna work on this paper a week before, I'm gonna study for this exam a week before. I've been to class, I've done my homework, it's there, the knowledge is there, I just have to bring it out. And so I think really, you know, what everyone's saying here is that setting boundaries is really key, whether it's like on your actual amount of work you're doing or preventing yourself from not doing that work, I think is,
Oh, I love that low grade stress that just, hums. And that was really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Did you have another question?
Yes, I was gonna ask, how would you guys, being that especially you two kind of paved the way for other women to be in your job fields, how would you guys like wanted to see or have been encouraged for the concept of women empowerment? And like, how do you think like other people should teach it like in their workplace that makes sense and is like appropriate? Like, how would you want to see it?
For me, it is all about what we're doing right here. Women supporting women. Oftentimes we're so flipping hard on each other. And, you know, we are better together than we will ever be apart. And so I think, again, I'm the oldest of 5, so I've always been in kind of a ghost leadership program. Anyway, maybe in a program, I don't know. But, you know, being able to, what is that one line that Kamala Harris has used it late and stuff? You may be the first, but don't be the last. So making sure that the other women that are in your life, one, like she's doing with her daughter, I see you. I see you. And if we are together in something, I believe that it's my responsibility as a leader to say to the next person, how do we get you? And Cassie and I have started having these conversations. How do we get you that next place? How do we do that together? And so I just really think it's important to, again, we're better together than we are apart. If you're the first, don't be the last. And that means that we have to reach back. And if we get to a certain place, we have to reach back and say, okay, hey, come on. There was a crack in this sidewalk right here. Don't trip over it. And stuff like that, because I've been there and I've done it. And so for me, that's what I think is what works for me and what I think is important.
I think you all have a leg up compared to civilians in terms of, right, putting the we before I. So, right, echoing what Lisa said, you have that instilled in you already, right? Like you help to elevate each other because you have a common mission that you're working towards. And so leverage that, right? And help get civilians onto that same train because we need it. Certainly on interviews, right? Put the I before the we. Right? Like know your story. In the military, you're going to have your rank, you know, on your uniform, but you don't have your uniform in the civilian workforce. So you need to put the I before we then and to know your story. But I think you all have a leg up in terms of sort of that idea of supporting each other and making sure that we're elevating each other to the next level. So leverage that.
So I do echo the connection part of that, right? Like, you have to look for mentors and you have to be a good mentor and think about all those times when a woman in a position of power just put you down or put you in a bad position, because that exists specifically in male dominated fields. And so I think that being a good mentor is huge. Another thing is, you know, when you're seated at a table, and not like a real table, a metaphorical table, look around you and see who's not there, right? And you know, you can't get the perspective that you would be able to if everyone's not at the table. And that's hard work to get more people at the table, but you can start by recognizing when they're not there and figuring out what the barriers are that are preventing them from getting there, right? And you know, for the submarine integration, right, it was kind of, they did their own thing, right? But we're sitting I was in a department and like, there's no women here, right? And they came, you know, but a lot of them left because of the issues that existed in the culture. And so we had to do this kind of restart of the culture itself so that it would be a better place for women to exist in, right? And so I think that probably the best advice, and to summarize what I have to say, is to develop those relationships and to empower women. You have to be an example, right? Like, if you have a younger, like, or someone that is looking up to you and you're talking bad about another woman, or you're, you know, like, she just did this or that, right? That person's going to see that and they're going to internalize it, and it's just going to perpetuate the problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say something very similar about just like setting the example. When I was transitioning, I felt very isolated, but just like not visible. And we had an SBA at Michigan, and I was the only woman in the room at the time. And as opportunities would come out for like speaking on a panel or giving a presentation, I don't enjoy like speaking in front of people, but I felt like it was kind of my responsibility in a way to be like, we're here, we exist, and we can be better together. Not just like educate others that like women in the military exist. We go through a lot of things, but also like we're here, like, let's support each other, right? Like, just if someone else would have been in the audience and not, feeling visible or heard or seen, and, maybe took away something from my story, or just sort of felt like, oh, just how we had this experience, like how we were all saying in that room that like, I actually feel seen here. I feel like I have a voice. And so I've kind of gone through, this journey and really taking advantage of those opportunities when they come to, again, like I don't really like people watching me or looking at me or talking in front of people, but I just saw it as my responsibility in a way to be seen so that others would feel like they're also seen, if that makes sense.
It does.
And I hope that empowers other women to then share their stories and be heard and be seen. Yeah.
All right, so that hour went by so fast. Oh my goodness, I'm sure we could just sit here and talk all day, and we can, go somewhere and sit down and have coffee and talk all day. But I want to say thank you to these fabulous women that have shared themselves. Again, you walk into something thinking, oh, what do I have to learn? And then you walk out going, damn, that was cool. And so I just, again, thank you for sharing yourselves with me. Shane, thank you guys for sharing yourselves with me. You're stuck with me for the next week, so just know that that's up there. And for anybody that's online, I hope you took away from it and just a little bit of what I took away from it. And again,